Well, I would like to welcome Michael Roethle from Boeing, who is joined us as a 411 partner with the Citadel's Leadership Day Senior Cadets Program. We're going to hear from Michael today about his leadership experience at Boeing. And Michael, why don't you tell these senior cadets who are thinking about entering the working world a little bit about what you do and just a brief recap of your path before we dive into some of the leadership lessons.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Ted. I am Mike Roethle. Just to give a little brief bio for me, I got my undergraduate degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Tennessee. I've gotten 2 Citadel master's degrees, which is why I'm representing the Citadel logo today. One in project management and one in leadership. So I definitely understand a lot of the principles that go into the program that y'all have been so ingrained in over the past few years. I'm also starting a doctoral program right now in organizational change and leadership as well. So I've got a lot of background in education in the leadership aspect. But as far as my experience in Boeing and kind of where I've been and what I've experienced, I've gotten a lot of experience, at least here in South Carolina. I started off as a manufacturing engineer with the 787 program at the airport campus. So I saw a lot of things, helped integrate a lot of new projects. And then I'm kind of made a career change over to the design side to where I moved up to the propulsion building and supported the 737 MAX program. I've done a little bit with the 777X program. And I've also had some opportunities to work on some of our development programs. One that was the NMA that got put on a shelf for a little bit. So got to see a little bit of the new programs coming down, even though it didn't end up panning out due to some of the business environment. But then I've also worked as a temp manager for my building as well, overseeing some of our tooling engineers, as well as our tool construction folks as well, and gotten to actually participate in some really neat opportunities helping support some leadership development programs as well. So I've had a lot of different experiences that kind of shaped what I foresee as a very unique perspective, at least within Boeing, because I've been a lot on the engineering side, but I do have some experiences that have opened my eyes up to other organizations within the enterprise as well.
Sure, that's terrific. And as a Citadel graduate twice over of the Citadel Graduate College, you know, that's obviously, it's not the same experience as the Corps of Cadets, but you understand a little bit about the core values and how we train principal leaders here at the Citadel. So what are Boeing's core values? How do they inculcate, how do they train new employees, and how do they re-emphasize those core values over the course of a career there, and how have you seen that play out?
So I would say there's not as much of a focus on the direct education as far as the core values. Typically, it's usually ingrained in the person to begin with. I know the Citadel puts a lot of focus on those 3 core values: the honor, duty, and respect. And those are great basis for just about any business unit you're going to move into, regardless of the industry. And I think it's almost more expected for people to have kind of an understanding of some of those core values already when they come into such a large corporation such as Boeing. Now, there are opportunities within our teams that we typically coach and mentor others, trying to expand their knowledge, not only on the business unit, but also focus on some of that personal development. So I'm not sure there's at least that direct correlation to a lot of the core values. But then again, a lot of our core values are on operational excellence, making sure we're being ethical throughout all of our actions, making the right decisions, being able to speak openly and candid when we are presented with potential issues, problems, things that we may not actually see that are right within the products, and having the confidence to actually raise those up to make sure that we're coming to the right resolution. So I think what the Citadel does with bringing that information into the core curriculum and making it such a focus is so valuable, because even with my interaction with some of the cadets, I think they are so much better set up for that integration into the business environment than I ever was coming out of school initially. I wish I had some of that knowledge and information up front, because I think it probably would have helped me transfer into a business organization a whole lot better as well.
Yeah, part of the purpose of this class is to help these cadets understand how the leadership experiences they've gotten in the classroom and in the barracks and socially with their peer groups, how that translates over to the working world. So, what advice would you have for them as they approach a corporation like Boeing, or really any professional working environment, for how to communicate those values in a way that is attractive and also sort of builds that bridge between where they are and where they want to be as a manager or leader inside of a major corporation?
So one of the biggest advantages that I see is that almost every cadet that I've interacted with seems to be willing to pour themselves into just about any topic that I've had a discussion with. They are interested in it. They want to get more information. They want to understand it and really get to an understanding aspect where they can go start applying it. I think that's a great building block. Excuse me. But I think keeping that interest and then building upon it, like completely pouring yourself into it. It may never be the most interesting job from the start. I mean, coming in at a very introductory level, it's not going to be the flashy projects or anything. It's going to be the core information to help you understand, build your skill sets, and then continually progress to that next level. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I also wish I would have really understood when I came out of school, that it's not all glitz and glam at the beginning, but as you build that understanding, you will begin to develop that experience and that mastery to where you are able to leverage that position into something better. Whether it's being able to influence others in your organization, whether it's kind of turning your focus to a different organization, taking your experiences and bringing a different perspective to that other organization. But it's just a very learning-centric experience. And as much as we focus on its school, then transition to the business world, it's a continual learning experience throughout our entire careers. We learn a little bit something different every day, where we build upon our experiences, what we know, and then be able to transition to a point where we can actually go and apply those skills as well. So I know I've had those opportunities where it just seems like a menial task, but I know, looking back and reflecting upon those experiences, that without that experience, it would be tough for me to have gotten to where I've gotten and experienced what I have so far, at least within my tenure within the Boeing company.
I think that's great advice. Particularly, these cadets are coming out of a very structured environment. So one advantage I think they will have is the ability to grind through difficult situations, but also knowing in a generational stereotype is that it's all about being great right now. And actually, in the working world, I think that's really good advice: to be patient, to bloom where you're planted, to do a good job at whatever we need you to do now, because that is actually part of the learning process, part of the screening process. And that's true whether you're going to work at Boeing, going to the military, or going to really any field. So that's terrific. What are you involved at all in the hiring process? Or do you help them think about how to look at new hires? And even if not, how do you think Boeing looks, or what do you think they are looking for in terms of new hires?
So I have not had to be part of the formal hiring process to this point. But more than likely this year, I will end up getting involved in some of the interviews that we do for a leadership development program. I'm currently part of the Leadership Next class of 2020. So at the end of this year, I'll be graduating from that program, but also be trying to bring in new people for the program to backfill the year that's currently graduating. And it is one of the premier, I will use air quotes on that, leadership development programs within Boeing. It's enterprise-wide, which means internationally we have 200 people that get admitted to the program every year. And as far as trying to identify people to bring into the program, I know I want to find people who really value that servant leadership. And I think that's probably one of the toughest items when you look at development, because as a leader, you need to be a little bit selfish in how you develop yourself. So you need to be very focused, but at the same time, you have to still have that outward focus for how do I provide value to everyone else. So that's probably the first thing that I would look at, is how are people not only looking out for their development, but how they're trying to provide value, benefit, and develop other people outside of just themselves as well. On top of that, I think looking at different types of experience, we all have different backgrounds, but having a diverse team is really important during these times. Not only COVID times, but going into the future. I mean, innovation is based off of having multiple different perspectives. You can't have a team of people that think the exact same way and expect to find a new way of doing things without having some new thought, somebody to challenge it. So if you have every team member that is thinking, oh, there's one way to solve this problem, you will never truly innovate. And I know Boeing's trying to put a lot of the same focus on how we actually go about doing strategic innovation going into the future. And having a really diverse team is really important and crucial to not only our business environment, but I know for any business environment outside of Boeing, outside of Charleston, anywhere you look in the world, being innovative is going to be crucial for success.
Totally. So, before the entire global economy faced challenges related to the pandemic, Boeing was facing some pretty serious challenges in the last 18 months. As a Citadel graduate, I'd be interested, and I'm sure the cadets would be interested to hear what maybe, I would think that's a good example to dig into for a little bit. Some of the ethical challenges that Boeing faced, how they responded, and I understand, you're representing your company here, not necessarily your personal opinions. But maybe the way to ask is, how do you think an ethical lens or a lens of some of the core values that as a Citadel graduate apply or didn't apply to what has happened? And if you'd give a brief overview for those cadets that were so busy with the 24-hour cadet schedule that aren't familiar, you might want to. I'm an aviator. I flew Boeing aircraft. I have a strong love of Boeing, so I followed it very closely. But maybe give them a little bit of a background, and we can talk about some of the ethical and leadership challenges faced by the company.
So you might have to remind me a little bit of all the different aspects.
I was specifically thinking of the 737 MAX, because you mentioned you worked on that program. Can we talk about that? If we can't talk about that, I understand.
I at least know at this point what I can and cannot talk about.
Okay.
So just to kind of give the high level overview, there was a new system that was really implemented into the airplane to help control pitch and yaw, because they essentially lengthen the airplane. So it changes the center of gravity, and that's what has kind of driven some of the issues with faulty sensors and other issues for the two crashes that occurred overseas. Yeah. I'm glad that my components that I was working on with that program are not part of what the issue actually was.
What were you working
I'm very thankful for that. So my building actually works all the nacelle components. So my building designs and builds the inlet for the MAX. I particularly worked a lot with the fan cowl, which is just another nacelle component. And then the TR, the thruster burster, was built. I don't even remember who actually builds the TR for that program, but my building is now becoming the nacelle center of excellence for the Boeing company. So our future vision is to really design and build all the nacelles for any future programs from here on. So we're starting to develop our building as far as our capabilities, our knowledge base, our production capabilities, and definitely have a bright future with making sure that Charleston is well supplied with jobs, interesting jobs, not only technical, but also if you really want to get your hands dirty. I say dirty, even though there's not a whole lot of dirt that actually happens in our facility, but actually want to go build the product. But as far as some of the leadership aspects around that, I know there was a lot of bad press about some of the communications that came out between different engineers about not wanting to speak up, about how foolish they thought some of the oversight from the FAA was. And to me, it speaks to a personal level of who those people are. It doesn't represent Boeing as a whole. It's not their ethical stance. It's not the cultural stance. It's those small little pockets that do exist in large organizations. I think it's really unfortunate. And I think it's really sad that people did not feel the internal strength to stand up and actually say what's on their mind, especially when they saw a potential safety issue.
Yeah.
Especially for a company that values and knows that every day the product that we build and put out to our customers has people's lives in their hands constantly. It honestly boggles my mind to think that somebody would not be willing to speak up and say, hey, I see an issue with this. Now, they might get run out of the room by some senior execs that have a completely different thought process. They might have to go put some additional information behind, but it's that resiliency to make sure that the information that you know, especially if you know it's wrong, is communicated. And then sometimes, sadly, if it gets up to a certain point, it might get ignored. It might get missed, and that truly is unfortunate. But I think those are some of the core values with the Citadel that I embody them now, and I have found since my experience with the Citadel, I definitely speak up a whole lot more. I used to sit back a little bit more. I'd talk a whole lot, and some people tell me I need to just be quiet at times. But I do challenge the process a whole lot more now. And I think that's really where we find that benefit out of the entire product. It's not just having people to go along with what they envision a great idea is. We can have 1,000 great ideas, but if you have that one or two differing thought where it puts a little bit different spin, it might get some of those people who are really advocating for that majority idea, where they start thinking about it differently, and you come up with an even better product. And again, that goes right back to that innovation. It's like challenging the process is almost core to what we need to do going in the future. I think hands down, it's helped my career, and it's helped me get where I have gotten and experienced to, just by being able to ask those kind of questions.
So I didn't mean to put you on the spot with a difficult question, but I will say, I think that what comes out of that is that even great organization, it happens at the Citadel, it happens in any great organization, folks do not abide by what would be considered a core value or a key characteristic that you'd expect out of someone that belongs to that organization. And that's how organizations define themselves, by how they respond to situations that are difficult. So I think that's excellent advice for any cadet. To summarize that, if you see something wrong, speak up. Even if you're junior, even if you are being shut down by a higher authority or headquarters, and that's true. It's true in the military, certainly, and it can be very difficult to do that. But that's where those core values of I think both honor and duty, and even respect for the organization and for the product, for those people whose lives are in your hands. Those are all key thoughts. So do you have
well, hey Ted, I got one thing to kind of leverage one thing you just said too, because I think it's important for everybody to understand the core values going down. But I also think it would be very valuable that if any of the cadets are struggling with connecting to some of those core values, if they don't necessarily feel like speaking up in a group environment, to find that one-on-one time to go speak with a superior and actually get that understanding. Because if you aren't connecting at the lower level to the higher level, it just doesn't work. You don't have that buy-in just like the rest of the group. You need to have that full communication, and I think it can really benefit a relationship too, and build on that relationship to further that future. And I mean, it's incredible how communication can really just leverage everything.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I also think that's a strength of the Citadel. They have a lot of face-to-face communication. Rarely do you find a cadet that has trouble presenting themselves. And so, one of the goals of this class is to help them think about how to present, how to really speak about core values, something that is, sometimes it feels like overkill here. They're constantly talking about it. But out in the real world, people don't talk like that. And so giving them the confidence to communicate that way, to speak from a platform of core values as they enter the working world, and giving them that confidence to speak up is really a huge advantage that the Citadel is providing them. So that's part of what this class is bridging that. So on a similar topic, rapidly changing economy, things have certainly looked different than they did last January. What are some of the challenges you see leaders like yourself and senior executives at Boeing having to take in stock based on, what has been just a massive global economic hiccup?
That is a great question. And I know I have my thoughts, but there are so many differing opinions out there. For me, being in my position, because I'm actually the Charleston site lead for my leadership development program here in Charleston. And this drastic shift from being able to be in person to being completely virtual has thrown so many wrenches into our plans for the year. Because typically, thankfully at the beginning of the year, we were able to have what we call a kickoff, where all 400 participants were in one location for an entire week. So we had that opportunity to network, to go hang out with other people outside of just the development time during the normal working hours. So we were able to develop those relationships. And very soon after that is when we came into this pretty much all in virtual environment. And it's been extremely challenging from my level, because it's tough to maintain engagement, one, where you're not able to actually go have that physical interaction. Face-to-face conversations are so much easier to have. It's so easy to kind of be a little bit more fake, I think, over like a video conference, just because you're not there in person. So you can kind of put on a little bit of that phony face. And I hate to say that. I know I try and be as genuine as I can. I've even told some other people on other meetings, like, this is just not the right day for me to be on camera. But I think being adaptive has been one of the advantages during these times. I've had to find new ways of trying to provide that engagement, new ways of interacting with people, whether it's just trying to ping people on a daily basis through IM, or give them a simple phone call, send them a text. Just doing those daily check-ins is one way that I've seen keeping engagement at a higher level. But I also know at a company level, they've seen very little to no degradation in company performance. They thought being able to work virtual was a big taboo before COVID hit. So I think as a company, we're starting to learn a lot too about how resilient and adaptive our individuals really are for making sure that we actually take care of our statement of work. It may not be within the same hours necessarily, because obviously we all are dealing with different aspects of life. We have things that pop up. I know, I'm sure with you, Ted, with having kids, if you're at the house, you're getting pinged on a couple of different items throughout the day. I was on a meeting yesterday with my program manager, and she had one of her kids at the end of the meeting pop up and just kind of hijack the meeting.
It's real life.
We're all dealing with real life circumstances, and we all kind of, I think we all kind of connect a little bit with those opportunities as well, because in a business environment, we don't get those opportunities to see people in their real lives. And now with video conferencing and being on the phone in this environment a whole lot more, we do get a little bit more insight into who people are outside of the office. And I really think that can be very beneficial for an organization going forward as well, to build the relationships. And that also leads, and I hate to keep going back to this, but to the innovation and the creativity that we're really looking for and striving to generate within our future generations.
I totally agree. It comes from a place of real authenticity, because you can't put on a suit and tie and go to the office or a uniform and fake it till you make it. You know, you're in your home environment. Folks get to know you a little better, and that creates an authenticity and a vulnerability. You know, so you really get to connect with folks. So in our last couple minutes here, any final advice that could be on resume, interview, how to manage yourself in a digital social world, whatever you think. We've got about 3 minutes left. I want to be cognizant of your time and the cadets' time. Any final thoughts from Michael Roethle at Boeing?
As far as, and I will hit this one first because I don't use it much. Social media, be very careful with what you put out there, because now with all of the heightened sensitivity to cultural issues, racial issues, anything, be very, very cognizant with what you put out into the world for anybody to see. I know I have been told on multiple meetings that even if you post something on social media, if somebody in your work group sees it and has an issue with it, they can raise it to HR, and it can then become an issue for you. So that's definitely one thing to be very, very cognizant about. As far as professional life, especially when you transition out of school, just dive in. Be inquisitive. Ask questions. There are no bad questions. You might have people who ask you or say that that's a stupid question, but I guarantee you, from a place of not understanding, and I've gone through it twice. When I made the switch from manufacturing over to design, I felt like I started my career over. I had a manager come up to my desk for 6 months every week, and she would look at me and ask me, "How you doing?" And I would give her a deer in a headlight look for the first 4.5 months, then started to come around and started to gain that experience. So ask questions, be inquisitive. Don't feel like you are going to upset somebody. We need to understand information in order to move forward. I know I get caught up in my head. If I don't understand something, it starts just turning the mouse wheel in my head, and I usually can't move on. If you can, good for you. But just be inquisitive. That's really how we move forward.
Great. Michael, thank you so much to you and to the team at Boeing for continuing to engage, even though we can't get together in person. We are very grateful for the time, and the cadets are certainly going to benefit from having heard from you and seeing how, you know, your career can progress through being inquisitive, through speaking your mind and standing on your core values. And also they get to see you as a manager. You know, I like this. I think I grow mine out on top a little bit. But you know, you don't.
I had to trim my beard up so I look like a hobo.
Yeah, no, you look good, man. But the point is that, you know, you're showing them something that they might not think of as a Boeing manager. And I think that's really very cool as a Citadel graduate twice over. So thanks again for the time. We're very grateful, and I'll stop the recording here. Maybe.
Well, I have one more little